Hello everyone, it's Lennon and welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about the weirdest tarot deck I have. It's kind of a recent acquisition of mine. It's called the Isolation Tarot by K.D. Hume, I believe is how you pronounce that. It was an Etsy purchase of mine because I had purchased this person's poetry book. And I loved it so much that when I noticed they had a tarot deck, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is happening. Without really thinking about it, okay? It says, K.D. Hume is a queer artist and writer from the tidal flats of the Salish Sea. Isn't that just, it's just straight, you know, quick and to the point, right? Anyway, I love their poetry, and the poetry book that I happen to have is called like Witches, Heretics, and Psychics. I think I should have pulled it out, but I found out recently that they do have a poetry book dedicated to tarot, so that's exciting. It's just so off the wall, okay? And I don't mean it to be, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I love that about it. I love it about that. I love that about this deck. What initially drew me to the deck was one card. It's the full card. I don't even freaking know if I'd be able to find it quick, fast, and in a hurry because I've been shuffling and working with it. The full card was in one of the pictures that is on the Etsy listing, and as that's really the Etsy listing was the only indication I had of what the cards look like. Like, no one had a walkthrough of this. It's like not popular at all, and so I really only had like the 3 or 4 pictures that were included on Etsy to get a vibe for the deck. Luckily, there were pictures of all 4 suits of the deck, so I was able to see what the suits were renamed as. Each suit resonated with me. The items that I'll just say the items and or creatures that they used really resonated with me, especially in terms of my witchcraft practice and my spirituality path. I use every single one of these symbols in my path in some way, shape, or form. So upon looking at like I said, the few pictures that included maybe a quarter of the deck, not all the deck, and without researching a deck, you kind of, you know, when you're only looking at a few cards, for me that's hard because I'm like, you know, one card can ruin a deck, one suit can ruin a deck, one like not knowing, I guess you could say not knowing whether it was like a pip with feeling deck or just a pip deck or an illustrated pip deck. Like, even if some of them looked pictorial and then some of them didn't, it's like, okay, well, which is it going to be? Like the majority, would it be pip or illustrated? And you don't really know these things, right? So I made the executive decision, based on what I could see, based on the 4 suits, the symbols therein, the symbols of the suits, and this one card of the Major Arcana, which is the full card, which is called the Symbiote. How perfect is that, right? I watched a video this morning, I think, from Esther at Mindful Tarot. I will leave a link to the video below. Esther talked about a little about the, I want to use the word importance. The importance of 0 in math, and then how the Solabusca integrated the 0 to be important in tarot, and why that seems like such a pivotal point in the tarot, is to have this 0 now into it, or to have a 0 in general, like to have an unnumbered card that wherever you decide to put the 0 card, whether it's in the beginning or the end of the Major Arcana, it goes there like the Joker card, you know, in a playing card deck, I guess you could say. But what is the significance of the 0? And because I gravitate towards the Thoth, I do very much look at the full, well, and I don't want to put the emphasis on Thoth here, okay? That's not what I want to do. What I want to do is say that because I love Thoth so much, I love the idea of the 0 being the void, the unmanifest, this crucial point in my seeking relationship to the void, to nothingness, to emptiness. And there is a huge emphasis in my life working with emptiness, working with the absence of things, very much in terms of dualism, I guess you could say, if we plug another label on there. But to have the 0 in this deck be the symbiote, that spoke to me of this host-parasite symbiotic relationship that you have with the universe. And if I imagined having this parasite in my head, very much like a Goa'uld in Stargate, which is one of my favorite sci-fi shows of all time, like the relationship between the symbiote and the Jaffa, and then the relationship between the symbiote and the Goa'uld, there's such a symbiotic relationship there, yes, but there's a building there, and there's a gradation period, and I very much have always found that fascinating, the idea of having a symbiote and it sustaining you, and this idea of, will it change you, will it overtake you? And when Esther talked about the 0 being this relationship we have with the world and emptiness and nothingness, because humans are naturally seeking something. We feel the void inside. What is that? And I don't necessarily believe that you will get the answer to that question in your life. I feel like it will be a never-ending, it will be an ongoing question, is what I want to say. So this was really pertinent for me. So anyways, let me put this down somewhere. No, that's gonna show. It's like a little stand here, because I'm really filming in an awkward way, because I'm just like sitting here playing with the deck, and I was like, why don't I bring my peeps along with me? So if I could give you a taste of the suits for a second, here is the 9 of Serpents. Serpents being one of the suits. Now, I don't know if other people do this. Because there wasn't a definitive answer to the question, was this inspired by a traditional tarot system, it's so hard. It's so hard to look at this like a serpent card, a 9 of Serpent, and not automatically see a 9 of blank, right? You want so desperately, only because the answer wasn't, the question wasn't answered, whether or not this follows the Rider-Waite-Smith system or follows the traditional suits or whatever. Like, they've just changed the suit names, but it still technically follows the suits. With a deck not answering that question, you try, or at least I do sometimes. This happens to be like, I think the only deck that I have that does this kind of a thing. If it's going off the wall like this, it better be an Oracle deck. Like, I want my decks to be, I want to be able to rely on the traditional systems in some form. And so it's like not knowing whether this is going off of astrology, Tree of Life, Kabbalah, numerology. Like, if it's not going off any of that, can you truly make this a I'll say a system-free deck? Even though the structure of tarot is there, would this be considered a system-free deck, right? So at the very beginning of having this, I decided right away that I was going to go through the guidebook, which I'll show in a moment, and try to find like whether the keywords would match up with one suit, like take the serpents, for example. I laid them all out, the whole suit, Ace through 10, and not the core cards, but Ace through 10, read the keywords, and could try to see if this would add up to one of the suits, and then try to see if maybe I could link the suits, right? It's really, for some reason, it was really hard for me, because I would say in this suit alone, the serpents, 6 out of the 10 would have matched up to the pentacle suit, it being a snake, right? But then I got to thinking, I'm probably forcing this. Am I forcing this? And then once it dawned on me that if I'm forcing it this much, then maybe I need to let the traditional meanings per card go. And so that's kind of where I went with it, you know. But it's still very weird. Like, even if this were a typical 9 of Pentacles, you know, typically when I see a 9 of Pentacles, I see this abundance, right? This abundance and growth to the point of expansion and stuff like that, right? But this is literally a puddle of snakes. Like, I don't know. There's so much white space in this deck, which usually I'm not a fan of. Hashtag not my tarot aesthetic. But for some reason it works in this deck. It just does. But this puddle of snakes was confusing because, like, this was one of those cards that just didn't add up. I don't know if the guidebook that the person wrote that made this was meant to be poetic, more poetic in nature than actually identifying the cards. Because what I got from the few key words and phrases that come in the deck, they were all over the place. For each card, they were all over the place. They weren't succinct. And I got to thinking maybe that was the point. Maybe that was the point. Like, they just allowed their intuition to come through and spout out whatever their brain was saying, you know? So anyways, back to the suits, and then we'll get back to this card because I want to share something about the guidebook with you and about that in a minute. So that was the 9 of Serpents, this puddle, what looks to be a puddle of snakes. Okay, and then we have the suit of Eyes. Now, most of the eyes in this deck look like in the process of growth. So for me, it very much, I believed in the beginning that eyes would be pentacles because of the vegetation I would see around the eyes. But that didn't work. And then after some research, I started to realize that if the eyes were one of the traditional suits, this would be the swords, probably, of visions and eyes open, third eyes open, and things like that, and how that relates. Now, the tarot is fluid, you know, like you got water in the swords, and there's a way that emotion and critical thinking meld together, and that's beautiful. Just like if you take the Rider-Waite-Smith 2 of Swords, for example, there's water in the background, right? And it does make you think of the emotional background that's backing up that decision making, right? So it does all meld and mesh together, which is beautiful, but there's so much vegetation in the eye suit that I didn't automatically think of it as the swords. And then there's tentacles. Did I pull 2 4s? I did. That's interesting. This is the 4 of Tentacles. And as you can see, this very much looks like a working together. You know, like the jellyfish are very much intertwined. They're tangled here together. I love them. Now, I call this suit the jellyfish suit. But the emphasis isn't on jellyfish because the person that made this deck doesn't actually use the term jellyfish. They use the term tentacles. So, and I know that jellyfish aren't the only animal in the ocean that have tentacles, okay? They're just not. So, but the emphasis is on the actual tentacles, so the little stingers. And in the beginning I thought, well, they sting you, right? So that could mean the swords, right? This piercing, this stinging, this lightning, electricity that's happening in the jellyfish. But for them to not say jellyfish and for them to be the tentacle suit, that never worked out either, right? Like if I were to get a squid card, it's not stinging me. Plus, that would be me adding myself into this picture. Adding myself, like I'm automatically here getting stung by the jellyfish. I'm not separating myself from tentacles or jellyfish or getting stung or something like that. And I had to think about that for a second. It's like I automatically went there with jellyfish. I automatically said, oh, they sting. That must be swords. That's like saying all guns kill people, like that's what that's saying in my head. I mean, I don't know where that analogy came from, but go with me. But that's kind of what I did. It's like I placed the human relationship with jellyfish tentacles into the suit itself. And that's probably not the proper way to handle that. Then I got to thinking, it's tentacles. Tentacle animals tend to live in the ocean. So this could be the cup suit. And you see how it's so hard for me to take the traditional suits out. Just take them out. Okay, and then the last suit is caverns. This is the 3 of caverns. Now, I don't know if it's in the Etsy listing or if it was on the blog of this person or on Instagram. Somewhere it said that the caverns are like vulvas, okay? And as someone, I will say the vulva is a powerful symbol for me, okay? As someone that has one, duh, right? It needs to be a powerful symbol. But that I looked at it, I very much approached the cavern suit in terms of the vulva and the vagina. But then I got to thinking, what the hell suit would that be? At first I thought, well, I consider mine to be a vessel of some kind. So maybe this is the cup suit. A whole bunch of leaking happening. It's a vessel. Things enter it, right? Like a tunnel. Like I was like really going off the wall. Like what suit could this be? And I did land on the wand suit because if you're entering the tunnel, this tunnel like whatever, it doesn't have to be a vagina, okay? But if you're entering this tunnel-ridden suit, then there is an aspect of journeying. There is an aspect of going forth. And passion. So, I did land on that. So I was able to put some suits down, but again, laying out all the suits and doing research and really, really studying the deck for the last week, a lot of the keywords didn't add up. People, they did not add up. And I'm going to give you an example because, like I said, we're really diving here, or I'm sharing what the dive did to me in terms of this being the weirdest deck I've encountered. And I'm sure if I were to ask you guys, y'all would automatically know which deck is in your collection that is off the wall. Like that either you find hard to work with, you find hard to study, but there's something about it, you're like, oh my god, this is plugging me all out. Okay, now it's so small, okay, in terms of like that's one card. We'll read all 4 of the cards that I plucked out for the 4 suits to give you an idea of what this means, okay? So for the 3 of caverns here, this is just a beautiful card. I love that these look like mirrors, or some kind of mirror or reflection or something. It says in here, sorority, craft, conviction, influence, and hirsuteness. hirsuteness meaning hairy. Now, hairiness to me means maturity. Influence means that you are getting influenced by others. Conviction means standing your ground. So it's like, are we getting influence, or are we standing by our convictions? See how it kind of, and then craft, so standing by your craft, the influences therein, and then sorority, right? So it's like, okay, to me, sorority automatically makes me think of the Three of Cups, not the Three of Wands. But if you think of this in terms of numerology, I guess you could say, the threes do form that relationships don't have to have just people in them. You can have relationships with so many things. And sorority here in this context, and like I said, these 5 words that this person used to describe the Three of Caverns: sorority, hairiness, conviction, influence, and craft, right? They wouldn't seem like words that you would meld together, but if I were to do a school-like exercise where they give you these words and they say, make a sentence or a paragraph out of all these vocabulary words, right? That's kind of what I chose to do with this deck. Make a sentence and or try to make like a little story, a paragraph out of the words that this person put down for one card. Didn't always work. It didn't always work. I found myself getting confused a lot of the times. 4 of Pentacles, entanglement. Makes sense. It looks like entanglement. Dependence. Okay, so see, the entanglement here could be speaking of codependence, so that those make sense. Reciprocity. Okay, so that's a give and a take for me. More about like if dependence were to that being almost the light side of dependence, like a good dependence, right? This is a good dependence. We're depending on people and it's good. It hasn't gotten in the shadow place yet. Forbearance and resignation. Are we resigning ourselves to the influence? Not influence. Are we resigning ourselves to the dependency? Forbearance, like as the last 2 words, forbearance and resignation, don't seem to particularly add up with reciprocity, I don't know. It just doesn't. So what I did try to do was take those words that actually resonated with me with the image. So entanglement, dependence, and reciprocity. I took those words and ran with them in terms of intuition to do my exercise with this that I'll talk about in a second. 4 of Eyes. Verdure. Let me pull that up like this. Verdure. Gnosis. Healing. Variegation and blessing. Okay. Now, verdure means vegetation and growth, right? So there's a lot of growth in the eye suit. Growth, also gnosis, right? So is this gnosis growth? I don't know. Is this like growth in the gnosis? Finding new ways to grow your personal gnosis? Healing, which it being a 4 makes sense to me. Is this there's ways to heal. There's rituals that you can do in order to heal. There's rest, ritual, and relaxation techniques that we do in the 4s that are aiding us in some way. Aiding us in terms of gnosis, aiding us in terms of growth, and aiding us in terms of gaining blessings. Like, we can't gain blessings if we don't know they're there, if we haven't unlocked certain parts of ourselves, right? I don't know, that's just where my intuition is going, right? But the image, I mean, it very much looks so fern-like, like these tendrils coming off in these beautiful spirals. It kind of reminds me of like the bell flowers. They're beautiful. But you see, like, can't really decide if they're swords. Are they a sword or is it pentacles, you know? Because for me, the eyes, I landed on the eyes being swords. So 4 of swords, you know, you think that's where that knight is, you know. Very much resting, not, and maybe possibly healing, okay, because that would make sense. Healing from something. Again, the image doesn't suggest that, so. Serpents, okay. And the last suit was serpents. This puddle of serpents, right, remember? The keywords for this card are rabble, trample, participation, endurance, and festivity. Festivity. So this is a party of snakes, right? Rabble, trample. This is a mob. Like, I'm thinking about like a mosh pit. I'm thinking about ways in which we get crazy. Ways in which, almost like a rave. Like how when we go to places or when we're involved in certain things, in terms of like a festivity, we tend to blend in. We're no longer an individual. We blend in with the crowd. We're just one with the strobe lights, you know, one with the mosh pit. The mosh pit being a group, a puddle of various things, right? So that's very much the energy I got with this, with those keywords. Okay. So that's it in a nutshell. And it does that for every single Minor Arcana card. And the majors. So that's it. That's all you get. Oh, I'm sorry for Missy. She's loud. That's all you get for a Major Arcana card. Now, because I pulled out the Symbiote, which is like the reason I bought this deck, right? I will read the Symbiote card for you to get that out of the way, to give you a feel for the Major Arcana here. I'll leave it up here. Gestalt subtraction. Now, gestalt means, I guess the way I've always described gestalt would be like the fact that I call it a pie, but it's 6 slices or 8 slices, you know. And then it's called gestalt subtraction. So we've taken out something. We've taken something out, and it's no longer a whole something. So we've taken a slice of a pie slice out of the pie, and it's no longer a whole pie. But it's more psychological than that. Anyway, we could go forever. So gestalt subtraction, deadly whimsy. Those 2 words make me really happy. I know that's going to sound crazy, but they do. Deadly whimsy, like I'm a whimsigoth. I consider myself aesthetically as a whimsigoth. So deadly whimsy fits. It fits. But deadly whimsy in this capacity makes me think, I don't know, it makes me think of the beauty of death in some kind of way. The way in which you would tell a joke at a funeral, right? That's whimsigoth. That's deadly whimsy. A mind free of embodiment. This speaks very much to me of the Symbiote. Ready to meet the world, and a long pause before a leap. So this very much feels like the Fool card, right? To me. And those were good phrases. Gestalt subtraction. The Symbiote, whether it's part of the whole, it's not. It's part of the host when it's a part of the host, but then it can be taken out. It can be subtracted from the host. And it be its own separate thing, right? So now I'm going to show you some cards because I feel like I've only shown you a few. I need to put them somewhere when I'm done. Here's the Cyclops, which And see, it's going to be hard for me to say this is the Cyclops card, which would normally be the High Priestess. Let me just put it this way. The majors sometimes add up to their numerological counterpart. Sometimes they really don't. And I do believe that this is like a weird system-free deck of mine, but then I have to be able to, I want to be able to research the possibility that the Cyclops really could be the High Priestess. Like, even if it's not meant to be the High Priestess, the fact that I can, how would I make it be the High Priestess? What would happen then? What if I melded the two together? What would happen? Like, that's where deck work like this, in a weird deck work like this, study session, would go. Like, I would just allow the rabbit holes to open up. So, the Cyclops, and then number 2. The Diver as 11. I love that. Love a mermaid on a quest. Eyes. Some eyes. Caverns, love that. The court cards have been renamed as well. They are Knave, Monarch, Angel, and Shadow. Yes. More tentacles. A lot of the tentacles in the tentacle suit look like jellyfish, but there are some that aren't jellyfish, I believe. Serpent. I love this Ace of Serpents. It's very Persephone with this glowing pomegranate half down at the bottom here. Isn't that beautiful? I love the way that Hume draws snakes. I just love it so much. Snakes are so important to me. Ooh, look at the hourglass. I love the hourglass as temperance. I love that. The thing that moves. Like Jello. 3. 2 of Serpents. Love the lighthouse. Perfect hermit here. You know, like, it's just like, very, like, would you consider this pips? Because instead of it getting laid out like pips, like playing cards, it's very much laid out like you would see a snake. Like, snakes actually look like this in real life. Like, they sit like this. They sit up on, you can't say sit up on their hindquarters. They don't have hindquarters. They what do you say? They veer up. They veer up from their back half, you know. I love this. This is the 8 of Tentacles, but look, it's like they're going up. You know, thinking of the 8 of Cups, right? Someone leaving. I just love that. But see, like, this is the Angel of Eyes, but it has tentacles, and it also has a serpent tongue, and it looks like what looks like to be a beak and an eyeball. What the hell was that supposed to be? The Relic. Love this freaking card right here. I love it. Not to get too graphic, but I very much see this card as a mastectomy. Because that does look like a boob on a plate. And I'm sorry for those of you that may get triggered by that, but I love the idea of this deck paying homage to that. I don't think that that was his intention. It looks like a boob to me. It looks like a breast. And the fact that it's on this like saucer, this flying saucer with roots, kind of like you would, like, if you were to see a graphic rendition of an eyeball being plucked out, with like the veins and stuff attached. There's some gruesome, there's a grotesque way in which anatomy just is. And the fact that there are horrible things that humans go through that we want to keep forever. We want to keep our autonomy forever. And I very much feel like this as the, to me, this is a strength card because it's an 8. I love that. That's strength right there. That's strength. No denying it. More eyes. Oh, dropping cards. Shadow of Serpents. Look at all that chaos. Love it. That's the Revolution, which to me very much speaks to being a Tower card, you know. The Supplicant as the Moon card. Like, look at that. It's a dog and a moon, and there's a howling at the moon effect that I get with that. That I planted there. I wanted there. I want to see a dog howling at the moon, or wolf howling at the moon. I think that's important. But for it to be the only card thus far, actually the only card in the deck that's called Supplicant, when we traditionally see supplicants in the Hierophant card, and in the Devil card, we don't see supplicants. We don't see people praying. We don't see people undulating and this being this like unhinged devotion. You know, we don't see that in any card but this. And it's not that we see it here. It's that we're actually seeing the animalistic side of supplicancy. I'm telling you, it's a powerful thing. I believe that this World card, much like I believe that the Fool card is so important to me, the World card is one of those cards that, if it's going to, it can ruin a deck. But this is Asteroid, the Asteroid, as the World, numerologically, I guess you could say. But this reminds me of that quote, the world will end in fire and ice, blah, 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 blah. But then it also reminds me that there is a tree on the top of this asteroid, which means that there will be growth in the destruction. And you don't always actually see that in a World card. You don't actually see the turning of the World card over, you know. You see the world and you just say, oh, it's an ending and a beginning, but you don't actually see the ending and the beginning. And to have a tree growing on the top of an asteroid is the absolute perfect rendition to me of a World card. I mean, how perfect is that? All right, now to wrap things up, I'm going to end with telling you what I've done with this that was actually kind of inspired by Anna over at Astro Lady Tarot. I wrote my own guidebook. I made this out of signatures. I made signatures out of copy paper. And then I had this, striped paper. And I just sewed the signatures to this flimsy piece of cardstock. And wrote my own guidebook. Now what I did was I went through and listed out what I thought, like I said, Suit of Caverns. I'm not going to read it to you, but I wrote down what I thought the caverns overall were about. And I'm sorry I have to lick my finger, but it's copy paper and I can't firmly grab it without licking it. So there you go. So I went through suit by suit first, because when I study a deck, I always start with the Minor Arcana. So I started with the minors, 8s through 10s, and then I wrote down a little of what I thought the suit was in general, and then I went 8s through 10. I somewhat used the keywords that were in the actual guidebook, but then went my own intuitive way with it. And then after all 4 suits, I did the court cards, one by one. And then I did every single major, which kind of looks like this. Like I did a little drawing. I did a little drawing and then put a little bit of what I see in the SYMBIOTE card or the whatever card. So I made my own guidebook. And it really kind of helped me to map out the deck a little bit. Like, more so than if I had done it like by shuffle or just kept doing deck interviews. I just really felt like the deck interview itself wasn't going to be enough. So I wrote my own guidebook to help me map out the cards in basically really tapping into my intuition. It was a profound experience to write my own little white book for this deck, you know. Still the weirdest thing that comes in a pack of 78 cards, you know, that I own. So, hope everyone is doing well, and I hope you found this enjoyable. Let me know what you thought, or what you saw when I showed some cards, and much love.